What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. We have the number 3 ranked contender, Leon Edwards. 18 wins, 3 losses, and 1 no contest, taking on the currently unranked Nate Diaz. 20 wins, 12 losses. And this fight is taking place at UFC 263. Now, Leon Edwards has been needing a significant fight for like over 2 years. You know, he had beaten RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, and at the time, that's still Leon Edwards' most significant win. This was in July 2019. Then some months went by, and then after Tyron Woodley lost his title to Kamaru Usman via 5-round decision, Leon Edwards was supposed to be Tyron Woodley's comeback fight, because Leon Edwards has been, surging up the rankings, has basically been knocking on the door for title contention for some time now. So this Woodley opportunity would have been a huge win for Leon Edwards, because that's, one of the biggest names in the division, former champ. And this is before Woodley would then lose to Gilbert Burns, then Colby Covington, and then most recently Vicente Luque, to where now Woodley is out of the UFC and is preparing for a fight against Jake Paul. So keep in mind, this is Woodley right after losing the title to Usman, and that was supposed to be Leon Edwards' next opponent. Well, then COVID came, Leon Edwards couldn't get out of the UK, ends up having fight after fight versus Khamzat Chimaev, scheduled and then fall apart. Scheduled and then fall apart. Khamzat Chimaev, surging prospect, super popular, super entertaining, hasn't fought since he caught COVID. And one complication after another has been occurring, and we still have yet to see him return to the cage. So I hope that his post-COVID career can continue, but this was, also a huge setback for Leon, because, that inactivity just extended to where, July 2019 was his last 2019 fight. He didn't fight at all throughout the entirety of 2020. And then he finally has a comeback fight against Belal Muhammad, who took the fight on somewhat short notice. Well, not somewhat, it was short notice. And this fight gets stopped in the second round, beginning of the second round, due to an accidental eye poke, and then it results in a no contest. Devastating for both Belal Muhammad, who, this was his biggest opportunity to date. Leon Edwards is the number 3 contender in the welterweight division, and this was also obviously hugely disappointing for Leon Edwards, who just really needed to get back in the cage, get some rounds back under him, and come out victorious. This, again, ruled a no contest, so it's like, damn, Leon Edwards just can't catch a break. Now, I will say that Leon Edwards did have an opportunity in 2020, it sounded like, to take a fight versus two-time former title contender Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, currently still in the top 5, I believe. Yeah, he's ranked just after Leon Edwards. He's the number 4 contender right now. And Leon Edwards was acting like he was too good to take on a fight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And I'm wondering, what the hell are you talking about? This is a guy who fought tooth and nail versus Tyron Woodley when Woodley was champ twice. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is still about as real as it gets at welterweight. And his resume, in terms of the guys he's beaten over the years, still way more decorated than Leon Edwards. So I actually thought that Leon was a little deluded in his assessment of where he is versus where Wonderboy Thompson is. I thought he dropped the ball there. Now, Leon Edwards' last loss was 6 years ago, 2015 we're talking. In MMA years, that's a lifetime, right? 6 years. And that was against Kamaru Usman when Usman was just hitting the UFC scene. Both Usman and Leon Edwards have greatly improved since then, but that was still Leon Edwards' last loss, and that was via decision. Leon Edwards, to this day, still hasn't been stopped. He's got 3 losses on his record. One of them was in another UK organization, Fight UK MMA. And then he had a 2014 loss against Claudio Silva, another 3-round decision. Same thing with his loss against Usman, 3-round decision. So then Leon Edwards goes on a 8-fight win streak The third of which was against Vicente Luque, who has recently started working up the rankings himself. His last loss, by the way, is against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Just putting that out there. But Leon Edwards goes on this streak, and the last 3 wins, so the 6th, 7th, and 8th win in that 8-fight win streak came against Cowboy Cerrone. They actually headlined the card, and that was a 5-rounder. Leon Edwards won that via decision, and then he beat Gunnar Nelson via 3-round decision. And that was the same night, by the way, as Darren Till versus Masvidal, where Masvidal knocked out Darren Till cold, totally turned his career around. And that was also the same night that he then meets Leon Edwards backstage and pieces him up, basically just chips him up with a couple punches, famously known as the 3-piece and a soda. Yeah, that was the same night that Edwards beat Gunnar Nelson and Masvidal knocked out Darren Till. And then Leon Edwards' most recent win, again, July 2019, came against RDA, a 5-round decision. So now he gets a huge opportunity versus Nate Diaz, whose last fight was against Jorge Masvidal. This was that November 2019 BMF championship fight. It was kind of a fictitious title that they attached to this fight to, elevate it as a main event, although, based on name recognition and Jorge Masvidal's performances against Darren Till and then that flying knee in the opening seconds of the fight against Ben Askren totally made Masvidal a superstar. So this Masvidal versus Diaz fight, Masvidal pretty much whooped Diaz's behind in that first round. Dropped him multiple times, once with a punch, another time with a kick at the end of a combination. I mean, Masvidal was just a more skilled kickboxer in that case. And there are a lot of fans who wanted to see, everybody wanted to see the fight continue. It was unfortunately stopped because of a cut to Diaz, who, I expect that to potentially play in this fight. Diaz cuts a lot over his eyes, tons of scar tissue. So this fight was stopped at the end of the 3rd round. The crowd was pissed off. The fans were pissed off. Everybody wanted to see this thing continue because it just seemed like it wasn't totally resolved. It was anticlimactic. Masvidal won all 3 rounds, but the idea was that, well, maybe Diaz will come and surge in the 4th and 5th because he's known to have very good cardio. And he just kind of keeps on coming. He's only been stopped. He's been submitted early in his career, but he's only been stopped with, punches and kicks once in his career. And that was against Josh Thompson back in 2012. Or no, actually it was 2013. Josh Thompson just caught him with a head kick and then just kind of poured it on. And, the ref just jumped in there. So Diaz wasn't out cold, but he had gotten decked enough time where the ref just jumped in, and said enough's enough. Kind of like, GSP wasn't totally out cold versus Matt Serra, but he had just taken 50 power punches and the ref's like, okay, that's enough. You're not getting out of this dangerous situation. But Nate Diaz is often involved in these battles of attrition where both guys are exhausted and they're just running on fumes and heart at that point. Think Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor 2. Now, I've always thought that Nate Diaz is a name recognition and fame. He's got a famous older brother, Nick Diaz, who had a long career in the UFC, former title contender himself, and he had lost in that opportunity versus George St. Pierre, one of GSP's, final fights. But Nate Diaz, for the longest time, was kind of in the shadows of Nick Diaz. And it took that win over Conor McGregor at 170 because Nate Diaz spent most of his career at 155. It was Nick Diaz who was the 170 guy, a few times at 185, but generally a 170 guy. And Nate, again, was at 155. He did poke his head up at 170 11 years ago for a few fights, but he's mostly been 155, and it was a huge opportunity in 2016 when, Conor McGregor was supposed to fight Rafael Dos Anjos. Dos Anjos had to pull out of the fight. Then on short notice, Nate Diaz takes the fight, but he says, I'm not sweating all the way down to 155, so if you want this to happen, Conor, you're going to have to meet me at 170. So Nate Diaz, not a 170 guy, takes the Conor McGregor fight. McGregor agrees and goes up to 170. And keep in mind, this is on the heels of Conor McGregor winning the 145 title against Jose Aldo. Huge one-punch knockout victory, shook up the world. Conor McGregor became champ and basically skipped 155. He would later capture that title against Eddie Alvarez after these fights with Nate Diaz up at 170. Conor would come back to 155, but Conor McGregor basically went from 145, jumped all the way up, skipped 155, and goes straight to 170 to fight not a true 170 guy, but still a guy who's significantly bigger than he is. Nate Diaz is bigger than Conor McGregor. And Nate Diaz famously finished Conor McGregor in the second round. Caught him with the punch. Conor McGregor got jelly legged and then went for a takedown once he was in trouble, because Conor McGregor is not a grappler. So if Conor McGregor is trying to shoot the legs, you know that he's in trouble or exhausted. So he got clipped, jelly legged, and then once on the ground, Diaz finished him, choked him out. Biggest win of Nate Diaz's career, and then he loses the rematch to Conor McGregor. That fight could have gone either way. It was a super grueling 5-rounder. Conor McGregor was awarded a majority decision. So then after the loss to Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz takes from August 2016 to August 2019 off. 3 years out of the cage. Think about that. And then he comes back to fight Anthony Pettis at 170. Not a true 170 guy himself, Anthony Pettis. 3-rounder, not a 5. A 3-rounder, and he beat Pettis via pretty commanding decision. And then he has that BMF fight versus Masvidal and got pretty much beat up badly for those 3 rounds. And then the fight stopped. By the way, only semi-related to the topic, I'm actually wearing this Creedence Clearwater t-shirt because they're from Lodi, California. Lodi is close to Stockton, California, the home of the Diaz brothers. If you know, you know. But I'm looking at this Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz matchup, and Nate Diaz has challenged for a title before. He lost a decision to Ben Henderson. This was just before he got stopped by Josh Thompson. The Josh Thompson fight came right after the Ben Henderson unsuccessful title challenge for Nate Diaz. So he has, reached near the height of the sport merit-wise. And obviously he had the 2 fights with Conor, and that's a big deal. And I mean, Nate Diaz has fought so many tough and top-notch fighters over the years. He lost to Rory McDonald when he did flirt with 170 before, but he lost via decision, 3-rounder. So super durable guy. But if you look at his record, 20-12, yes, he has fought mostly names in the sport, like tough guys. It's not like he's fought a whole bunch of and then racked up a bunch of wins like that. So his 20-12 is a hard-earned 20-12. But you look at that record, and it's just like, if somebody has like the technical jump on you and is just more of a craftsman, they'll probably beat Nate Diaz. And, Nate Diaz's popularity far exceeds his in-cage accomplishments. If you look at him relative to other, 155 guys and then 170 guys. Like, there are tons of guys who have been better. Well, I'm not going to say tons, but several guys who have been better than Nate Diaz who aren't nearly as famous. I mean, the Diaz brand is a serious brand. Wildly popular guys. But you look at Leon Edwards' boxing acumen, for instance, when he, beat Rafael Dos Anjos or, Gunnar Nelson, Donald Cerrone. Now, again, these guys aren't some of the guys who Nate's been in the cage with because, again, Nate's been in there with pretty much everybody. At least, back in his 155 heyday. This is before Khabib emerged and Tony Ferguson was a huge name. And Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier really came into their own. Diaz was doing his thing at 155 before those guys emerged to elite status. Because again, in recent years, Diaz has been largely inactive. So because of that, I'm leaning Leon Edwards, not just because he's a cleaner boxer. Although, if you look at Leon Edwards' 4th and 5th rounds against Rafael Dos Anjos, and, even a little later in the fight against Gunnar Nelson, although he mostly held it down against Nelson. Although, it was a split decision win. So one of the 3 judges actually had Gunnar Nelson beating Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards, to me, he's a fast starter. And he's a tough guy to win the first round against. And this is going to be key here against Diaz. Leon Edwards, I think, is going to have to win the first round because this is a 3-rounder. So you can't afford to lose a first round against a guy like Nate Diaz, who only gets stronger as the fight goes on. Whereas I think Edwards actually starts to regress rounds 3 through 5. Now, again, this is a 3-rounder, so you don't have to worry about rounds 4 and 5. Although I do think that the 3-round nature of this fight probably favors Leon Edwards, because again, Nate Diaz is kind of a 5-round dog. He's well experienced getting into the trenches and staying there. Although again, his win over Conor McGregor, his loss, the 5-round close razor thin win for McGregor over Diaz was 5 years ago. So I don't know what the hell Diaz's 5-round cardio looks like right now. But I think Leon Edwards has to win the first round, has to establish that first round lead. And because Leon Edwards is a true 170 guy, I mean, he only deals in 170. He and Nate Diaz, at 155 was kind of like a tall, lanky guy who was kind of looking down at his opponent, throwing with volume and just kind of overwhelming them with activity. He doesn't have that same advantage at 170. He's basically, close to equal height and reach with his opponents. Now, Nate does still have a, freakishly long reach, even at 170. I mean, 76-inch reach for Nate Diaz, which is huge at 155. But at 170, it's still a significant advantage, or at least an advantage. Like Leon Edwards, 74-inch reach to Nate's 76. Conor McGregor, by comparison, also has 74-inch reach like Leon Edwards. So Nate Diaz still has the reach advantage, but they're equal height. So the same dynamic that takes place at 155 isn't going to be taking place here. Leon Edwards, like Conor McGregor, is a southpaw, so I think that he is going to be able to piece Nate Diaz up a bit, especially in the first round. I expect Leon Edwards to win that first round, by the way, because of his more technical boxing, in my opinion, than Nate Diaz. And so if Leon Edwards is able to hold down that first round and win that, then Nate's going to have to win the second and third round or stop him, right? I don't see Nate stopping Leon Edwards. Nate hasn't stopped anybody since Conor McGregor that first time 5 years ago. Leon Edwards doesn't stop a ton of people either. He's won his last 3 wins via decision. He did have a TKO win over Peter Sabota back in 2018, and he had a submission win a couple fights before that. But Leon Edwards usually gets his via decision, and I do think he does enough to beat Nate Diaz 2 rounds to 1 or 3 rounds to 0. Nate Diaz, to me, just hasn't been active enough. He hasn't proven that he could do a ton at 170. I mean, his career record at 170, keep in mind, the bulk of his fights have been at 155, but at 170, Nate Diaz is only 4-4, and 2 of those wins came against Conor McGregor and Showtime Pettis, neither of whom, like I said, have proven to be solid at 170. So he split those 2 with Conor, right? 1 fight to 1. And in the case of Anthony Pettis, Pettis is not a 170 guy, and he has lost 9 of his last 15 fights. So it's clearly not the same Showtime Pettis who won the UFC lightweight 155-pound title back in 2013 against Benson Henderson. So yeah, Nate Diaz hasn't done a ton at 170. I'm not convinced. And he's a lot older, has been super inactive in recent years, still cuts a lot though. I do think that he has a chance at winning either the second or third round, because he does try to keep on pouring it on, and his volume and endurance can give people some problems. I just don't know if he'll be able to do a ton against somebody as formidable and skilled at 170 as Leon Edwards. So yeah, I'm going Leon Edwards via decision here. I think that he's the more technical boxer, so I think that in the sweet science, hit and not get hit, he'll have the advantage there. Nate Diaz, I don't expect him to do a ton of leg kicking with Leon Edwards. I mean, Nate likes to box himself. He might take Leon Edwards down at a point, but, I wouldn't be surprised if Leon Edwards takes Nate Diaz down. I don't think either of them will be able to secure a submission victory. So, yeah, I'm pretty firm in my prediction here. I mean, anything could happen, but I'm going Leon Edwards via decision. I mean, look, if Nate Diaz upsets Leon Edwards and takes this fight, then damn, the sky's the limit in terms of Nate Diaz's next fight opportunity. Who knows what he'll call for after that. If Leon Edwards wins against Diaz, I expect him to be... I'm expecting Usman to fight Covington next, although I don't think that's deserved on Covington's end, if I'm being honest. Like, all Covington's done since losing his title challenge, which was a great fight, by the way, great fight versus Usman, all Covington has done since then is beat a clearly declining Tyron Woodley. So does that merit a rematch against Usman? I don't think so. I mean, if anything, his first fight versus Usman merits a rematch just on the strength of that, the quality and competitiveness of that first Usman versus Covington fight, but not on anything that Covington has done since that. So I think that after that, then the next title challenge, if Usman gets by Covington or whoever wins, between the two, if Covington beats Usman, then maybe they run it back for a third fight. But if it's the next guy in the queue who gets a title shot, it would either be Edwards versus Diaz winner, especially if Edwards wins, or maybe the victor of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Gilbert Burns. That's going to be a good one as well. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Edwards versus Diaz. Please leave your comments in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.